Hey guys, it's Amalia, and today I want to share with you what I typically pack with me when I travel as an Orthodox Jew. So for this trip, the reason I really began to think about this is because I'm packing in a carry-on actually. We're not paying for suitcases for the flight, and we also would rather not travel around with bulky suitcases. And so I really had to conserve a lot of space within my carry-on bag, and I started realizing how many of these little items here and there that I do have because I'm an Orthodox Jew, but I also think it's interesting and is definitely doable. And maybe I'll even have some tips for how you can do this stuff as we go. The first item that I'm going to talk about is sneeze clothing, because obviously like everyone brings clothing when they're flying anywhere, but the reason I think this is specific is because one, it's definitely a challenge to pack sneeze clothing that can also be good for a long day of travel where you can dress modestly but also not be overly hot and just be able to move in the way you need to move. If you want to go on a hike, if you want to do any just like real like outdoor activity, it's definitely something to consider. And it also means that you really need to consider the fact that if all my clothing covers my elbows and my knees, it also frankly just takes up more room in my suitcase, I found. Meaning when I pack my like shorts that I sleep in, it takes up much less space than my skirts. So just figuring out how to pack them right. I'm personally a fan of the Marie Kondo method. I don't know if anyone remembers that really bad video I made a few years ago about me trying to organize my closet Marie Kondo style, but I did that at one point. I think I was wearing this dress in that video, fun facts. But I am a big fan of Marie Kondo and just like rolling my clothes in her method. So that is one tip if you have a little bit of a bulkier clothing item, simply because you need it for modesty purposes. An additional item I have to consider when I travel is the fact that I typically have 2 deodorants I use throughout the week. So I use I guess these are called, what are they? Rub-on? Typical. I just use a standard deodorant during the week. But then on Shabbat, you're actually not, because of the 39 malachot, there's 39 like actions that according to the Torah, you cannot do on Shabbat. And one of them is specific types of rubbing. You cannot actually use rub-on deodorant, I believe according to the majority of opinions or all opinions. And so most people will use a spray deodorant, or I think some opinions say one of those like squeeze like gel deodorants, that those are okay as well. But this is what I use. And it just means an extra thing to carry with me. At different times I've played around with having like a smaller one of these or smaller one of these so that I don't need to carry both. I could also really just bring this one. However, I much prefer this on a daily basis, especially like as I said, when I'm running around in modest clothing. It can definitely get very hot, and this tends to be a better antiperspirant. But I definitely could travel with just this if I really wanted to minimize space, but I will likely travel with both of them. Other item to consider is mouthwash, and I highly recommend, if you're an Orthodox Jew, getting yourself a tiny little mouthwash bottle for Shabbat. You'll know what I'm talking about if you are an Orthodox Jew. Essentially, there are varying opinions within the Orthodox world. Most people that I've met do not use standard toothpaste on Shabbat, again for the same rubbing action that we discussed before. And so a lot of people will use mouthwash, which is more of a liquid form, so you're not fully rubbing a cream in the same way you would be with like a toothpaste consistency. There are also like Shabbat toothpaste that are just basically liquefied toothpaste as well. I typically will just use mouthwash on Shabbat, both in the morning at night. I'll like rinse with it as well as brush my teeth with it. I know this sounds kind of gross if you don't experience it yourself, but it's very standard. It's one night a week, one night and one morning a week. And also, like, I really do make sure to brush consistently and well, even when I use mouthwash. But it is an extra thing to consider because personally, I am not someone who uses mouthwash every day of the week. And then when it comes to Shabbat, it's just an extra little thing to carry with me that I have to think about and not forget. This item is actually something my husband more has to think about. This is my husband's tallis bag where he keeps his tallis and his tefillin. His tallis like a prayer shawl, and his tefillin, which I guess the term for is phylacteries, even though I feel like only Jews know what phylacteries are to like describe that that's the term for it. That's my typical understanding when like TSA stops us for his tefillin, that most people, even if you say, oh, these are my phylacteries, it's not any more helpful than saying these are my tefillin, but there you go. That's my little rant. But basically, this is something, in addition, remember, he's packing in a carry-on, and he has to bring this along with him, pray every single morning using the items that are here. And so it's just a little bit of an additional bulky item to bring. Typically, my husband actually has a separate tallis that's a bit more fancy for Shabbat, and a weekday tallis that's just a daily tallis. And Typically when we travel, he'll just bring his weekday talis as well as his tefillin in this bag. But it's definitely an extra thing to consider, also because occasionally you'll have a flight where you're actually going to have to pray shacharis on a plane. And if you have to pray the morning prayers on a plane, so you also need easy access to this. So you have to really either get it to stay in your backpack, or you're going to have to like go and pull down your carry-on to get it. Which I will say, as I mentioned before, actually we've had trouble a few times if you're traveling in a place where they're not as familiar with what a talis or tefillin are, where we'll be stopped by TSA for them thinking it's a suspicious object. Some other things I will typically bring with me when I travel is my sitter. Depending on if I'm just going away for weekdays, sometimes if I'm really short on space, instead of bringing my full sitter, I'll just use one of the numerous sitter apps that are available on phones. However, for Shabbat, it becomes useful to just have a full copy, and also it's sometimes nice to just be able to pray from like a written out book, because sometimes on your phone it can get distracting if people are sending notifications, stuff like that. So I tend to travel with this with me. I also want to talk about my learning when I am away, because basically pretty much every day, and sometimes I don't succeed at it, but there is a concept of really trying to push yourself, both for men and for women. However, for women it's less of a set obligation to really learn every single day. Something Judaically related, there's a lot of details about like what to choose, whatever, but I won't go into that whole process. However, I do try to learn something daily. And so, especially on Shabbat, when you have a lot of free time just sitting around, if you're staying in a hotel or something like that, if you don't know anyone in the area, I think it's really important to have something that you can, something Judaic that you can learn with you. However, a lot of Judaic books are actually pretty bulky. For example, this is a one volume of a Gemara. There are definitely smaller sets. Like we have also a mini set of Gemaras as well, and that one is more travel friendly. But this, if you want like all of the commentaries, any like this has a verbose like amount of commentaries and things like that. And so this is like more ideal. However, when I'm traveling and I want something to learn and I don't want to carry this something like a heavy book like this with me, I found my new go-to is Pnei Halacha. Essentially, it's a set of books that go through different areas of Jewish law, and he's really good. The rabbi who writes this is very good at like citing his sources and just going through the different opinions and works that he's bringing into just writing out the law. This one that I'm doing right now is on the laws of kosher. And I've been just reading it whenever I have time, or I'll sometimes keep this in my purse, so it's something to do, because it also is just a really nice way to refresh your knowledge of Judaic law. Another item I always consider when traveling is to make sure that either I take a cup with me, or typically if you're staying in a hotel, you're fine because they'll have in a bathroom, and I'll explain why. Basically, this is a washing cup. It's for ritual hand washing that we do in Judaism prior to eating bread when we wake up in the morning. Some people do use this as well after they go to the bathroom. So there are a lot of different times in the day that this is used. And therefore, it's very important to have some type of cup for pouring water on your hands. Essentially, there's a few different variants of when you do it throughout the day. If you're washing your hands in the morning, then you go 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Hence the handles, it just makes it like an easier experience. And there's also 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is a small cup that I actually keep in my bathroom here. Typically, I won't bring it with me on trips. I've seen people bring these on hikes, so it's a very nifty travel thing. If you are bringing sandwiches with you for a large group on hike, this is a great idea to have with you. But usually what I'll do, actually, I've gone through a few different things of what I'll do just to make sure I have a cup both on the airplane for washing my hands after I wake up in the morning, and once we land in the hotel or wherever we're staying. So either something I found as a very useful cup, honestly, the cups that they have on planes that you like pour your water into, that you're given on your tray. Occasionally I've taken those and used them like either for the whole trip or multiple times, just kept them in my travel supplies as a cup. They're not as ideal simply because this cup is pretty much the size you need for like one pour. There's a specific amount of water you need to pour on your hands each time you're doing it, and so it's just more convenient if it's it can fit in one thing as opposed to having to do multiple pours to get to that amount of water, which is why it's nice to have something this size. But typically there's also is an option, to be fair, in hotels where you can literally, if they leave like a glass cup or a plastic cup on the sink for you to rinse out your mouth, something like that, it can also just be used to replace this. But this is a nice item to travel with when you can. I'm not going to be taking it on this trip. However, I do appreciate these small cups for like a trip for hiking and other outdoor activities. Just another item that kind of bulks up my carry-on is my head coverings. So this particular trip, just because we're going to areas in Europe where I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with like broadcasting the fact that I'm an Orthodox Jew, I've decided to only bring one headscarf because it looks just like more of a specifically religious item as opposed to my wigs. So I'm going to be bringing both my wigs as well as this headscarf on this trip, and I likely will be wearing a headscarf on the flight and then changing into these like when we land or when we get to our hotel. And traveling with these is actually not that hard, but it takes a little bit of consideration and time, and especially my wigs are natural texture, but for people who have wigs that are not naturally textured, so they can really lose their texture when you like fold them and play with them to get them in your bag. So I'll show you what bag I use as well typically, and what I'm going to be using for this trip just to maximize some space. Typically what I will use actually is this makeup carrier bag that I actually bought from my shetelmacher, the woman who makes my shetels. And the way I will pack my wigs, it's like a hard case, so they're not going to get crushed or anything, because the main thing, you just don't want the head of the wig to get kind of like misshapen. I've never really experienced it happening with mine, but obviously these are expensive high-end items, and so you still want to just be careful with them. So this is my fall. I'm wearing my full wig at the moment, and basically what I do is I just take the hair at the bottom, I twist it, and I fold it into itself, and then I just pop it in the bag. I make sure there are no hairs coming out because I don't want them to get zipped in, and then I zip it shut. The reason I'm not bringing this on this trip is because honestly it's just a little bulky, and I really don't have the space for it in my carry-on this time around. And so the other option that I've also seen people do is literally just to take a regular shopping bag. I'm going to use a paper bag because I feel like it will get less frizzy. That's my idea. And I'm just literally, again, going to fold it into itself, pop them into the bag, and then close it up and put them in my carry-on. So, and I'll likely also be bringing this tiny little spray bottle with me, that way I can just like freshen up the wig as we go and like scrunch it up the way I would do with natural hair as well. And so that's another just additional item that I always have to think about. The truth is I'm also going to be bringing headbands to go with the fall, because the way the fall works is you wear it a bit farther back and then you have a headband in the front. And so that's just an additional thing I have to think about, all the headbands to like match whatever outfits I'm bringing. But I could have also just opted to bring the full wig at all times, but honestly my fall is more comfortable, so I prefer to have that option in addition. These are my travel solutions for wigs. I am really thrilled to get to go on this trip, experience a lot of different cultures in Europe. I'm so grateful that we've already kind of gone and shifted our lives from a very USA focused life to living in Israel, and now we're going to get to see a few more parts of the world. Thank you for watching, and let me know in the comment section if you want to hear any other videos about Orthodox Jewish travel, how we make our arrangements, our plans, or if there are any other videos you would like to see, what you thought, if there's any other items you have to bring along with you as an Orthodox Jew, or if you have any questions. And thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time.